she told me, no, I'm preparing. So
I said Maxie, so she
wing it. She said, I told you, and I said, oh no, when? She went, right now. So Kris and I have been friends for a few years now, and this year we hiked the West Highland Way together, which was really great because not only were we hiking, so I was able to share something that I'd become good at with Kris, but also we were both in the throes of writing and perfecting, as far as you can, our books, which was a brand new journey for both of us. I've never written a book before, and you definitely haven't written a book before.
And we had the same fears and self-doubts, so it's great to share those.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you see someone who's clearly successful in what they do and appears so confident. And when you talk to them, I had loads of insecurities about writing a book and worried that it wouldn't be interesting enough or that people wouldn't like it. So I would say them thinking that she'd reassure me, and you'd go, oh my God, I'm worried about exactly the same thing. And neither of us had to worry because we both authentically told our stories, and they were all very well received, I think. Yeah. So, I thought that I'd write a few questions, and I went a bit hard and heavy and deep on some of my questions for Kris, so we might skip some a bit philosophical. If you've read the books, you may well have done, you know that it covers lots of really interesting themes, thought-provoking themes, that make you think about life in a different way. So the first question I really have is that you have a lot to say. And I'm one to talk.
Yeah.
But what I mean is you have a lot of profound, interesting, useful things to say. You had a documentary made about you. You started a charity a long time ago now. So you've always had a story to tell, a message to give, lessons, hopefully, to share. But it's taken you this bloody long to write this book. So my question to you is, what were you waiting for? Why did it take you so long? Were you waiting for a feeling, a time in your life, a place where you felt secure enough to let it all out? Tell us about why it took this long. Why documentary was okay, but this took longer.
Yeah. I think it was only when I started writing it, and seriously writing it, because for so long I had written different chapters or thoughts and ideas down, but nothing really was any good. It really had to make sense in my mind, and as I was writing I was like, this isn't there yet. So when I, even like 5 or 6 years ago when I first got my literary agent, I shared what I'd already written with her, and she shared it with some publishers, and they were like, this isn't hitting the spot. And I knew that that was true, but it still hurt hearing that. So they didn't think I was ready, and actually I didn't think I was ready either.
What wasn't ready?
I think they were saying that I don't have a hook, but I knew I did. But essentially, so the reason I decided last year, was it last year?
Who knows? Time is
20. Yes. What is this like?
That was 2020 or
we wrote in 2020.
We wrote in 2020.
During the first lockdown, I was writing.
Yes. 20.
And it was only when I started really seriously writing that I realised I'd got to a place where I could find the words that made it sound like I had got to this level of acceptance and analysis and closure with a lot of things. Also I thought, and it's only in writing the book that I realised that I'd reached the peak of knowledge with a lot of things that had happened to me, but also analysed stuff as I was writing it. So it all came together as I was writing it.
Yes.
But I wasn't entirely sure. And I think there's a lot to be said about like the way you analyse trauma and the way you accept trauma, and at what stage is it a point where you say, that happened to me, that doesn't rule my life anymore,
It's
but
not
it's
still happening.
Yeah, that was part of my life, but it isn't everything that is me. And also, I think sometimes you can tell that in someone's writing. You can tell when someone hasn't really fully dealt with what has happened to them, and or you can tell if someone has truly dealt with something. And I read Glennon Doyle's book,
Untamed.
Mm-hmm. And I've watched this interview that she gave talking about sifting out the gold from your trauma, and it's only when you don't know until you really start writing it down that you realise, is this gold, or is this or these really open wounds still?
Yes.
And I think if I'd felt all the way through writing that I was writing from open wounds, I don't think I would have continued with the process. I really wanted to feel like when people read my book, they knew that I was coming from a really confident, oh wow, she's really got her head around what's happened to her. And that's what I wanted to come across in the book.
So do you think people need to have gotten to a place of acceptance and to have gotten over something to be able to be creative and express it? But that's where you needed to be.
That's where I needed to be.
Yeah.
Because I think there's so much creativity and expression that you can get out of any part of your journey, whatever that is. But for me, I wasn't ready until I was really ready. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I could have written it maybe 4 years ago. But
wouldn't have been quite the same book though,
I
would
don't
it?
think it would have. And I think writing in a pandemic, I don't know about you, but there was so much focus on what was happening in the world around us, and focusing on myself felt almost like so like self-indulgent to be like, oh, I'm writing completely about me when the whole fucking world's falling apart around us. But at the same time, it gave me so much time to think, so much time in my head, that I think there would have been so many more distractions had there not been like these lockdowns to writing.
Yes, and I think the pandemic, for all the terrible things it's brought, was a natural bookend to a way of living. So I think all of us in some way have had to look at the before and the after. It's a crossroads moment for globally. So I think what better time to take stock than to go, well, who am I now in order to be somebody after this pandemic is processed? And then that's the perfect point to sit down and look back at where you are. And as you sift through trauma, you're not always going to come through with gold nuggets. Occasionally you are going to catch an open wound in that. And then you make the decision, I guess, as to whether you carry on processing that or you just think, that's enough, this is my cancer story, this is my story up to now, I need to leave all that and move forward. So do you feel like by writing this, you have closed up the open wounds a little bit and now you're moving on to a different chapter of your life?
I felt like the cancer wounds were very much closed already before I started writing. It was the stuff that I talked about in terms of relationship and who I was before cancer.
I found that fascinating.
That was more of an open wound than I realised. It was only in writing it that I really confronted it. And that's when I felt like, oh, wow, this is how I really feel about this.
You wrote in the book that you've cried more about boys than you have about the death of your grandmother, about cancer, about the death of your father, and I related to that so hard. I was so embarrassed about myself having read it, going, oh God, I've had chronic pain, I've put my family through hell, I was suicidal, I've done this and that, but I yet have cried more about boys than any of those things. I don't know what that says about us, but it's not to be explored right now. So, back to the paperwork. Okay, so, do you feel like this is the only book that you're going to write?
In existence, yeah. No, it's, yes.
There's no, because it's an incredible story with adversity, joy, self-reflection, a lot of lessons to be learned from it, whether you suffer from cancer or not. But I think there's even more that could be taken from it, but you feel like your writing is done for now.
That is it. And I think I talk about this in the book a little bit about like having these things that you still want to do, things that you still want to achieve. And I think that's fine. I think this should be like a bit of excitement about life, like this thing that I might get to and achieve. But I was so conscious, even when I started the book project, that I might not get to the end. And I might not see it published, because the publishing, I mean, we know, it's a long process.
Really.
So when you write your first word, you're not actually going to see that in print for like at least a year and a half. So that is such a huge commitment for someone whose life is very much on the line. But I committed to it, and I guess that was for me quite a brave thing to do, because I hate planning ahead, and that was terrifying to do. And I just really wanted to see the day that book came out, and thankfully I have. So for me to now say, oh, there might be another book in me, that would scare me, because I'm like, fuck, then there's another thing that I need to stay alive for, and I don't want that pressure. It's enough to want to stay alive just to be alive, without having to do all these things to tick off as well.
Yeah, which is why you're kind of anti-bucket list.
Yeah, I am anti-bucket list.
Yeah.
And not that on the placard, I'm
anti-bucket list. The planning thing is interesting because we had this discussion also, organically we had this chat about the West Highland Way, where, so I, with my chronic pain conditions or things that I've struggled with, I could never guarantee that I'd be able to actually ever finish anything or do any race that I signed up for or anything I might have ever trained for. I have to enjoy the planning of it and live, whether it's a holiday or whatever it is. My sister's hen weekend I organised and couldn't take part in because I was too sick. So I live in every moment of planning as if I'm doing it, and then just always let go of the outcome because I probably can never go. Whereas you're the opposite, you don't want to plan.
And that's not because I don't think it will happen, because I believe in hope and you know, envisioning something.
Yes.
Like I do think what's it called? Manifesting is really important.
Yeah.
And I do believe in that, and I think the universe has some creative plan. But ultimately, I don't want to commit to something because I'd almost feel like I've let people down if I don't achieve it.
Yep.
And I don't want to be disappointed.
No.
When I die, I don't be like, oh, I wish I'd done that.
Yeah, I understand.
I don't know, but I truly don't believe that people do feel like that in life. I don't think it's, I want to do, oh, I wish I'd done that thing, or I wish I'd seen that place. I think it's very much becomes about the simple things of, did I tell that person I loved them enough? I think that is actually what's most important.
Which leads me really nicely onto another question, because I know that you're doing a death doula course at the moment, and that something that we've spoken about since we first became pals, me being a teacher and you being in the situation you've been, is that we don't talk about death enough. We don't talk about death enough to students in school, to kids in school. It needs to be on the curriculum. It needs to be spoken about in the way that other cultures speak about death. So you speak in the book about, and your direct quote is, the best thing you can hope for is a love affair with your healing process, which I completely agree with. But I wanted to ask you, can you have a love affair when you're not healing with yourself? Can you have a love affair with dying? Can you have a love affair still when the projection isn't up?
Yes.
Tell us more about that.
I think it's hard, but I do, the more I've learned about the death and dying process, the more I have learnt that you get to a point, and I think, I mean, this is very, for me, it's, it really depends on how long you've had an illness, how long you've had to come to terms with your mortality, and all that stuff. But I've had 12 years to come to terms with my mortality, so I almost feel like you will get to a stage, and I think this is very common for people with cancer, that enough becomes enough, and that the treatments are just too hideous, and they outweigh the benefits. The horrificness of the treatments outweigh the benefits of actually staying alive still, and then you reach a point where you just want to succumb to whatever life you've got left.
Yeah.
And I think it's in those moments that you can become really in tune with what life is truly about. And I wish it didn't take those final days, weeks or months of your life to really come to terms with what's important. But that seems to be what I seem to be learning, is that's when you do become in love with your dying process too. I think that it is possible, and I think people are so scared of dying because they feel like it's going to be horrific, and dying's not always perfect. It really isn't, but it can be.
Yeah.
And it's that's what I want to hold on to.
So when you have to go for your scans and those things that unsettle you and you share freely on your social profiles, you disappear for maybe a day when that's happened and you pop back up again, are those regular reminders? Can you look at those in a positive way, in that they're regular little shockwaves that remind you of what's really important? Because this time the scan might not be really good, so I still have to make the most of everything.
No.
You don't? Interesting.
Not always.
Because you're only human and we can only be resilient for so long at a time.
And it becomes exhausting.
Yes.
I had such mixed feelings whenever I've had good scan results and bad scan results. Even on a time when I had good scan results, I always felt bad that I wasn't really happy about it. But I just felt so fed up. I was so fed up that I had to go through these huge roller coasters of emotions every 3 months. And that frustration and that anger totally outshone the fact that I should be happy and joyous about the fact that I get to live freely for 3 months, and without thinking about cancer for a bit.
Because you can still get knocked over by a bus tomorrow. It doesn't mean that your life is without any other problems just because you get a clear scan result.
Well, there is that, and there's also, I talk about this in the book about this toxic positivity.
Yes.
I just think it's so much pressure, and it seems to be so prevalent in the cancer world for cancer and positivity seems to be sort of somehow linked. And we don't talk about that with any other disease. We don't say, you really need a positive mindset to get over
chronic pain sometimes a bit.
Really?
It's that idea of like the biopsychosocial model of pain management, and that if everything else, if you're miserable, depressed, feeling down in the dumps, negative mindset about it, you're turning up the dial of your pain, and you're being deleterious to your general health, which will increase pain.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of that, and it is frustrating to be told that you have to be jolly all the time to be better.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not, I just don't think constant positivity is very sustainable.
No, and the feeling that you should be constantly positive, and if you're not, you're somehow letting yourself down, is like beating yourself with a stick. Makes things worse. Just a couple more questions. One a little bit philosophical. I know I've been getting a bit deep here, but you talk about we talked a little bit about time in there, and I wondered if your condition has changed your concept of time, because like, do you feel bad for sitting down and putting your feet up for a whole afternoon, or when you first got diagnosed, you kind of wanted to be doing everything and make sure you're living every single moment. Do you feel that pressure now?
Absolutely not.
Good. Okay, that's it.
I know.
That's that.
I don't want to feel that pressure. Again, it leads back to like I wish I'd done more. I wish I'd seen this or whatever. I just don't want to feel that way.
Yeah.
And I love sitting in front of the telly doing that.
Watching Neighbours back to back in the bar.
That's my favourite. So I don't want to ever feel bad about that.
Okay.
Ever.
And nor should you. Two more, much lighter.
Yeah.
What's your fondest memory of us on the West Island that we're allowed to talk about?
Has anyone else done the West Island?
Not yet.
You're going to do it?
I would love to do it actually.
You should do it. It'd be lovely. Chair on top tips with you another time.
You have my midget.
Oh yeah, I know I need one of
I've got
those.
some smidge for you as well. We'll sort you out.
I'm there. I'm there.
I think it was the blisters that would have put me off.
Yeah, her blisters were horrendous. Fondest memories, people. Fondest memories. I think it was the dance clips for me.
Oh yeah.
Were you struggling to remember a fond memory?
So many.
When we lay on the side of the road because your feet were so bad you couldn't go any further, so we walked down the hill off the main trail, skived, and then your friend Neil brought us 2 huge big boy cans of Strongbow, so we lay on the tarmac and drank the Strongbow. That was quite good.
That was definitely high. The landscape, the scenery, being in Scotland, in the Highlands, is just a very special place for me anyway. I just haven't laughed.
Yeah, just laughing. We laughed so much. Okay, and finally, one of those generic questions that people ask when you've written a book. Did you learn anything new about yourself in the process of writing a book?
I learned that I can stick to deadlines. And seemingly, because there were so many moments, and you probably felt the same way, I don't know, maybe did it, but there were so many moments like, oh, maybe this is good. And then something makes you doubt that again, and then something else happens like, oh, maybe I am an author.
Yeah.
And then something else happens, you're like, oh no, I'm a piece of shit. And then after that, and I obviously actually come to terms with the fact that I've maybe coming to terms is not the right way of saying it, but acknowledging,
Accepting, acknowledging, yeah. That you've
I've written a good book.
Yeah, you have written a good book.
So I think
It was really good. I'm not just saying that. Just like me. I'm a teacher and everything, so like, I know what good writing is.
yeah, and I think women,
Yeah.
so hard to be boastful and kind of be really
Proud of ourselves. Yeah.
and really say like,
It is
I've done
hard.
something really amazing here. And I think that's always running somehow in your subconscious. So to say out loud, I've done something great, is,
Yeah.
I mean, makes you feel weird, but also
Yeah.
good.
We should be proud of
Yeah.
what we've done, for sure. Because not only did we create something that we feel proud of, that I would buy my book and read it if it wasn't by me. You know, I like my book.
Yeah.
But also the graft, the time, the effort, the emotional turmoil, because both of ours are memoir,
Yeah.
which takes like, you are digging those graves back up and you are going, did I really
Yeah.
do that? oh, I just bury that now. I've got to actually write about it and relive it now.
Yes.
All these bad decisions. And then everybody can judge your bad decisions.
Yeah.
Online, give you 1-star review for being an absolute mess of a middle-aged woman sleeping with a 26-year-old man on a trail.
And saying the F word.
Thank you very much, everyone. Go and read the 1-star review. It will make your day. An absolute disgrace. You are an embarrassment to middle-aged women. Wow.
Was that meant by a woman or a man?
A woman. Very repressed woman who's not having a lot of sex.
She needs to get herself under a 26-year-old man.
Or on or
Any which way backwards.
I'm sorry for the ignominious end to your interview there.
No, great. Thanks for the questions.
Thanks for
Should we talk about this old book?
that old book.
On Lost. Has anyone read it? Yes. Thank you.
I gave you 5 stars. Not 1. It was not me writing that.
Thank you very much.
So, just to rewind a little bit, I met Gail, a few years, how many years? There was this life before COVID.
Yeah.
Then.
Not millions of years.
No.
Just friendship instant.
At a talk in London, and we got there, and no one really knew what anyone was doing, and there was no one to introduce us, so it was a bit of a shit show.
A bit like this.
No.
Is it us? We're the problem.
Yeah. Chaos follows us everywhere.
Yeah.
No, it was, and in the end it was so great because I got to meet Gail. But she gave a speech about something, and I thought it was so brave and so amazing. She was stood on stage and she was telling us about something that she hadn't even done yet. That she was saying that she's going to walk this thing called the Appalachian Trail in the US, which I'd never heard of before. And she was so excited about it, and I just thought, it takes real courage, and actually, I guess, do you feel like having said it out loud in front of an audience of people that you were really committed to that?
Yeah, then I had to do it.
You had to do it.
It made it real.
Yeah, but you stood on stage and you're talking about this trail that you were going to do. So there were no tales of, this is what happened on my trail, these are the things I learned from it. It's like, I'm committed to doing this, I've come through some shit, chronic pain, and this is now what I'm committed to doing. And I thought, that's
What a blagger to get a talk at O'Hara when I haven't even done it yet.
and I just thought that said so much about her and really fascinated me about you.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you very much.
So I'm so glad that you did go and do it.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Because obviously this book wouldn't exist unless you could write a whole book about doing something you hadn't even done yet, which I think you have actually probably done. I think if anyone that knows, I think you would have been able to do that. So I do have some questions for you as well. Okay. I think, so this book, there are so many lessons to be learned from it. And I think for some people they might read it, I have something similar to her because I've come through chronic pain. Or I really want to walk a trail. Or there's a woman doing a solo adventure. That's a story that I want to hear because we only hear from men's stories too often. There's so many reasons why someone might read this book. And I feel like you highlight quite a few things, such as awareness around chronic pain. And you write about that so well, by the way. And like, in a way, reclaiming who you are after trauma, and also solo adventuring.
Yeah.
Going out there, being brave and saying, fuck it, I might not have the body for it, I might not have the fitness for it, I'm going to give it a go. But what do you think was the most important thing that you really, if you want one person to come away from reading the book, what's that one thing?
The one thing that the book could tell them, it's probably the idea that what you've been through to this point right now does not define who you will be in the future. I think we can get really caught up in our identity based on the sum of our experience, those that have been done to us, mistakes that we may have made, and we become like a pot full of all the ingredients of our life, and that stew can sometimes be a really tasteless, horrible, nasty blend. But it doesn't mean that we have to be that person forever. At any moment, on any day, you can make a decision to be different, or to set your course differently, or to choose a different way of life. And you might not be able to walk a trail tomorrow, but what you can do tomorrow is to read a blog about a trail, or make an email to someone who's done it and ask them one piece of advice, or something that just slowly starts to turn your ship towards a different horizon. And the fact that that is open to us every day every minute, every hour, no matter what kind of dead-end job we might be into, what kind of horrible partner we've got, what kind of difficult parents or busy life or sick child, we can do something every day to repoint the compass and take us into a new future is really empowering. And there are many things in that book that show that I've made many mistakes. I made mistakes on trail, there's trauma from my teens, there's all sorts of stuff where I could have decided this is the person I am, but it's not. I might be a different person tomorrow, inch by inch, centimetre by centimetre. So yeah, every moment is the chance for a new beginning. That's not what I thought I was going to say when I started speaking, but I like it.
Okay. You're sticking with that?
Yeah, I'm sticking with that, but I believe it, and it's great.
Yeah, it's great. But before you started writing it, you're like, okay, this seems to be the definition that I thought was in my head of who I was before doing the trail. But what do you think? Because obviously you're saying who you are, what you've been through doesn't define you.
No.
But equally, what do you think was defining you before you did the walk, and what do you think was defining you after you did the walk?
Oh, interesting. I think before I did the walk, I was busy, very busy. I was defined by my success with my career, director of academics in Hong Kong, this, that, seconded to the European Commission for this, that, and the other. So I was very much defined by, my worth was full of what I could be, what I could do, what other people thought of me. And I thought if I hiked the trail, I wouldn't be that person anymore, that I could just be an adventurer. But actually I became defined a lot in the book by what people thought of me on the trail. And then I realised it's not about the career, it's not about the job title I have or where I get sent and posted around the world. It's that I don't know what I think about myself. That's why I'm looking externally at jobs, at people, at groups of friends, to define how worthy I am. So I learned that I can't define myself. I've just been diagnosed with ADHD, by the way, and this is a dystopia for me now. This is why Kris is giggling, because I'm like, noise, distraction, what am I actually saying? So it's about externalizing. I always externalized my self-worth, and the trail helped me just pack all that back in and learn to internalize my self-worth, that I get to define who I am, not my circumstances or my groups or my friends.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yes. But on that point, you talk about all these people that you meet on trail. You're the same person to everyone on that trail.
Oh, yeah.
What you do, where you've been, where you might think you're going. That is so irrelevant when you're on trail. And do you think that was with everyone that you met? Like, no one judged you, no one saw you as someone weak or.
No, I think the trail is a great leveler. Any kind of physical endurance is a great leveler, because in the most basic ways, you're pooing and peeing in the woods together with people you've never met. Not together is like, no, that's weird. But you're filthy and you stink. And what other environment could you meet people, unless you're caught in a Poseidon adventure or stuck in a lift together for 3 weeks? In what other environment would you meet strangers and within 4 or 5 days you go to the bathroom while they stand behind a bush for you, and then to stinking BO washing in a stream together like this, naked? No one cares.
Yeah.
You are very quickly leveled as human beings, so no one cares how much money you've got or the jobs that you had before, and you begin to rely on each other really quickly, so that you give up that pretense of I'm fine by myself, I can look after myself, which you can, but when you're on the trail and you fall over and you can't carry your bag, or you skinned your knee and you do bring a plaster, you're in a seriously bad situation. Or if a bear's taking your pack because you didn't look, you looked the other way when you were doing something, and the baby bears come in and grab your pack and run off into the woods with it. That's all your food, your hydration systems, your water filtration systems. You are really in trouble. And people are very good at helping you out very quickly and sharing everything they have.
Yeah.
So nobody judged anyone. And people were just immediately incredibly supportive of each other.
And do you think everyone could use having that experience in their life so it levels them out?
Yes. More than that, the idea that we judge people too quickly. Yeah. So I would be walking past, I can get political here, I guess, a bit, because we're not in America, but I'd be walking past houses with covered in Trump flags, with all the banners, Trump 2020, it was 2019 that I hiked it, and I would be like, oh my God, creep past the house, shit, these people are clearly crazy, and then all of a sudden someone would come out the front door, and not with a gun, which I was like, duck, it would be like, bottles of cold water and fruit and cake and come on in and let me give you a shake. You got dirty laundry, I'm going to clean your laundry for you. You know, everybody would look after you. And then you'd hike with people who you just would avoid otherwise because they looked either boring or they were annoying. Spend 2 or 3 hours walking with somebody deep in the woods, they start to let go of the outside shell of who they are, and you get to see their inside personality, and you end up falling in love with everybody you meet in a different way, platonically or otherwise, because you realise how much richness and joy and loveliness there is in all walks of life and everyone you meet. So that's what I would want everyone to experience. The idea that the person that sits next to you on the bus, your person you go, oh, in the street at, God, look at them, are actually glorious, glorious humans, just like we all are.
Okay, I'm glad you have to go on the Appalachian Trail to realise that.
Yeah. You already knew that stuff.
Where did you do your writing? What was the perfect setting for your writing?
I didn't write in the perfect setting, but it turned out to be perfect. I was in the Bahamas. I was in the Bahamas. It was very bougie. I was in a pool house, had a private chef, and I was rubbing shoulders with the double Justins, Justin Bieber, Justin Timberlake, and Will Smith, because I was on a fancy bougie tutoring assignment over there in a private resort for 3 months, which meant that I was tutoring like 3 hours a day in the afternoon, and I had all day long by the pool with my laptop to write the book, which sounds like it should be easy, but you know, you're in a tropical island, so it's really hard to focus. I was doing other things, so I set myself a strict routine, which was every morning, as soon as I got up, I'd write 2,000 plus words. Once I'd banged them out, then I could go and do anything else. And it became like meditative every morning. I'd look forward to getting up and writing those words. And actually, the whole book was written in those 3 months in the Bahamas. And although I didn't think it was ideal in the beginning, to be removed from all my distractions of real life was brilliant. To be put in a bubble somewhere where nothing was familiar meant that my writing of the trail wasn't coloured by the coast path or other people's memories of it or people trying to talk to me about the writing. No one could really contact me unless I wanted them to. It was COVID, so it was all locked down anyway. And then the whole book formed in that bubble. And luckily, because it was a trail book, I had kept journals every night, some of them really short, just going, Christ, that was a shit day, you know, and others was really, really long. And so that was the backbone of the story, and I followed that through as I wrote. Yeah.
Thank God for these diaries.
Yeah, otherwise, I mean, it would be more fiction than it already is.
Okay. I wanted to ask you about your recent diagnosis of ADHD. That's okay. Do you think if you'd known for sure, because you probably had some thoughts about ADHD before you went on your trek before you went to book?
No.
So it's completely.
No, I was tutoring James in London for 2 years beforehand. He had Asperger's, which is now folded into the ASD spectrum diagnosis, and he had like oppositional defiance disorder, and all sorts of other conditions that made him like a massive handful. And I found myself when I was tutoring him, and he was saying particularly belligerent things or saying outrageous stuff because he had no filter. I remember thinking, oh, I actually really identify with that. I can't tell you what. And I remember thinking at that time, I think something's up with my brain, but I'm not sure what it is, but I feel very comfortable around someone who's got a diagnosed wonky brain.
Okay.
So that's it, that's all.
Yeah. So had you known for sure with the diagnosis, do you think that would have changed anything about the trail and also the way you talked about yourself and how you dealt with certain situations on the trail? Would you have been kinder to yourself?
Sorry, that was like a traumatized response. I don't know, it's a good question.
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't have been able to write the book the way I did if I'd have known, because some of the things I've done, some of the decisions I made or the emotions that came out of me, I just put down to me being like weird or bonkers or.
No, that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. You know that we embrace our bonkersness, and that's okay. But if I'd have known it was a formally diagnosed thing, I would not have been able to process it in time to write about it freely. So the moment I'm processing having ADHD, the diagnosis, which is just a word, so it doesn't necessarily change anything in the bigger picture at all, but I'm processing it. I'm looking back at my life at the moment thinking, was that me or was that ADHD? Is that my real perspective, or is that a chemical thing? But if I'd had to think about all of that, if I had to meta-analyse it while I was writing, I wouldn't have been able to write it. As it was, I just thought, I am bonkers, and I'm just going to write about being gloriously bonkers.
Great. Would you write about ADHD now?
Yeah, hell yes. And I'm going to, because so many people are being diagnosed. You look, even the last 2 weeks, you've got Kris and Gail, Melanie Sykes, both with autism spectrum disorders, Candice Brown with her ADHD. People write to me a lot on my Instagram and socials saying, I am going through what you are discussing. Thank you for talking about it. I'm now seeking a diagnosis. So it needs to be spoken about. It's glorious having ADHD and really hard,
I
but
find
great.
it fascinating. So many reasons for ADHD. And because I think I learned so much about it through doing the trail.
Oh yeah.
And you're explaining things to me. This is difficult in this moment because of this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, shit, I don't experience that. And
Yeah.
until you tell me this, I don't know how you're experiencing a certain thing. So
It was that was a really growthful. That was a growthful. That's not a word, but a super growthful journey on the West Highland Way with you, because it was post-COVID. So we're coming out of COVID. I hadn't had stimuli properly for like a year. So coming straight back out and having those two lads filming us the whole time, telling us to go left, right, and centre, do this, do that. We couldn't hike the way we wanted to. It really made me realise that I need certain things to feel okay.
And you've done a long trail solo, essentially. Obviously, you met certain people on the way and you hiked them for a few days or weeks or whatever. But you set out solo, whereas we went together and we had to have some kind of structure because we were being filmed. And that must have been tricky for anyone to adjust to.
Yeah. Good job. The film's great though.
Hashtag haven't seen it yet.
Hashtag did they?
Okay. So actually, I've kind of asked. Is your next book going to be about ADHD, or what do you want to focus on in it?
Next book is, I'm trying to write the proposal now. It's hard. It doesn't get easier. I've written one book. Sitting down and focusing and writing the next one doesn't get easier. My next book is a narrative handbook for young people from the age of about 10 to 15 about coping with lots of the bumps in the road that they're all dealing with, coming from a teacher perspective, a pedagogical. I'm doing a master's in inclusive education at the moment, and looking at my journey on the trail as a backdrop for looking at things like how you're dealing with your phone, how you're dealing with body image, how you're dealing with friendship issues, how you're dealing with self-esteem, resilience. Can you fail? You're 11 and you fail on one thing and your whole world has ended. How do you learn how to fail? And all of those issues that we deal with as adults. You know, you've got Elizabeth Day's podcast, How to Fail. You've got lots of great information for grown-ups about how to cope with resilience and the pitfalls of life. There isn't that kind of thing for young people that isn't dumbed down. Marcus Rashford's just done it, a great book around football. But I don't know that that's accessible for everybody. There can be many of that ilk out there coming from different perspectives. It was going to be just for girls, and actually I've done some research. I know that boys and girls struggle the same way from 18 years of being in the classroom and with kids. But I really thought I could only maybe speak to girls. But I just did a poll on a Google Doc on my stories. 140 people wrote huge amounts, parents, reams of information about their child, what they're worrying about. 55% were boys. So that's going to be the next book. And then after that, Cornish Enid Blyton series for kids, that style, although less homophobic and Enid Blyton. No racism, no homophobia, it's all going to be good. But you know, the faraway tree bark. And then adult fiction. I was thinking about a private detective with ADHD. Yeah, I thought so.
And now we turn into a cartoon.
Yeah.
On telly.
Yes.
Great.
Great.
I think we should leave it there.
Yeah.
I think that should give you a bit of a flavour, some backstory on our books. But if there's anyone who's got a burning question for us as well, please feel free.
We didn't practice, could you tell?
Off the cuff stuff.
Yours was really good.
Yours was really good.
Wow, I've got a bit heavy. Very interesting. Philosophical nature of what you spoke about.